Fair skin prejudice in a society causes two teenagers to take drastic actions. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Sometimes it's not necessarily strange, but it is around, as I talk about authors from around the world, and that is the case today. It is Short Story Tuesday, so I want to talk about some interesting short-form literature. Today's short story is all about color prejudice, a good topic to talk about at the beginning of Black History Month. I am referring to the story Fairness by Chinelo Okparanta, which was published in 2013 in the short story collection Happiness Like Water, although the story was published previously in various other article or journals and whatnot. For those who don't know, Chinelo Okparanta is a Nigerian American writer. She lived in Nigeria until she was about 10 years old, and then she moved to America. And she has been writing for the past 15 or so years. She has at least one novel published, and there's been some critical acclaim for her work, especially for how she talks about LGBTQA sort of stories, which is nice. It's very important that people talk about those and represent them positively in the media. Now, I should point out that I'm talking about this writer for Black History Month. I would have talked about them outside as well, but just so happened to find them for this month. I should note that they are Nigerian, so technically the label Black applies to people who don't really know their origins because of slavery and the diaspora. But I'm still going to include this woman in Black History Month sort of exploration, because it's important to talk about Black Africans too, people who know their origins, because regardless of your designator, you're still probably underrepresented in literature circles. So, that's what we're here to do, and that's highlight, various voices. So without further ado, let's talk about Fairness. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Fairness focuses on an unnamed teenage narrator. I don't know if they're actually specified what their name is. I couldn't really identify it through the text, but I'm calling them the unnamed narrator. And at the beginning of the story, they and their friends encounter another friend whose skin has sort of lightened up. And they're all kind of jealous of this person because I presume they're Nigerian. Their skin is darker colored, and there seems to be a preference for lighter colored individuals in this society that they're in. And so we see how they're trying to get lighter skin. They're jealous, and they're working to sort of make that difference for themselves to produce some sort of outcome. We see that there's pressure from their mother in terms of getting them various creams, in terms of various sort of treatments to sort of lighten their skin color. And there's also a sort of frustration because the servants that they seem to be wealthier individuals. Their servants have lighter skin, which brings a little bit of shame, because if your servants have lighter skin but you don't, that's something mocking worthy in this society. We also find out from the narrator's mother that the narrator is going to go to America pretty soon for school to get a better education so that they can come back here to Nigeria, presumably, to get a job, because that would be desirable. Or they would probably stay in America, as that is the land of opportunity for them. And so they're getting ready to do that. And then the narrator and their friend Eno decide to use a bleach treatment to sort of lighten their skin, not letting their parents know about it. Unfortunately, Eno, or the narrator dips Eno's face in the water, the bleach water, which causes a disastrous effect, essentially maiming this child, this fellow teenager. The parents come in along with the family's sort of house guard or something, all of them wondering what the narrator did to Eno, and Eno's like, "Don't worry, we'll find out something else that will work," showing that this desire has produced really a negative effect that is willing to make these children hurt themselves to get lighter skin color. Presumably they get a talking to, we don't see, but in the next couple of days, the narrator looks at Eno and sees scabs forming, but these are brightly colored scabs, and the narrator feels some jealousy as the story comes to a close, because even temporarily they have lighter skin color. In terms of analysis, there's a couple of ideas that Okparanta talks about here that are worth acknowledging, and that is, one of those ideas is colorism. Okparanta highlights color prejudice that exists in this Nigerian society. Colorism, for those who don't know, is it's like racism, but it's focused on skin color, where people who have lighter skin often have are viewed more positively than those people with darker skin, especially in this especially shows up in societies that are non-white, and I know, like, on Twitter there's always the meme of like light skin versus dark skin people of color, black people in particular, and the colorism, the prejudice that sort of exists with that. And so, like, lighter skin color is preferred in this case, but especially by these people who probably don't realize this internal racism that is going on, that is probably stemming from these European or American whiter societies who sort of enforce or like pass on this racism to these cultures. And I've heard about this sort of expressed throughout the world, not only in Africa, but also in India in particular, where darker-skinned Indian people are typically on the lower rungs of society, and those who have lighter skin are viewed more positively. White people are sort of praised when they come around. At least that's what I've heard from my friends who've been in India, or maybe even China, or various places like that. So it's unfortunate and it's not right, but that's what exists within those cultures. And I can't really go over there and say, hey, this is wrong, because, that's me as an American coming in and interjecting. But I can note that, colorism is an ideal, in particular. And you might wonder, like, where does this come from? It comes from these other interloper cultures, these colonialist cultures, of course, but it also is passed on through family, as we see in this story. The narrator's mother kind of pressuring her to go through these treatments, to put on these creams, and making the narrator feel bad when it doesn't really work. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. The first magazine arrived 2 weeks later. Cosmopolitan. Pale faces and pink lips decorating the cover. Women with hair the color of fresh corn. Perfect arches above their eyes. And that, you can see how media and, like, the parents can kind of enforce these sort of unhealthy sort of perceptions of the body upon their children. The media saying, like, oh, look at these women, aren't they beautiful? These blonde white women, like, isn't this skin color great? Without, actually saying it, but showing it by propping this up as the standard of beauty, and the parents kind of sharing that without maybe realizing it, although I do think the parents realize it because they're participating in this colorist kind of system that says that, these people need to make their skin brighter so that they are they are preferred, they are ideal, even though that's not actually the case, and doing that is more harmful than anything else. And this pressure leads often, to drastic actions happening. It starts off with creams, but if nothing works, then it might lead to more drastic actions. In particular, in this story, we see bleach used, which is not good. You should not be bleaching your body. That's bound to produce some negative effects. The bleach. even maims the Eno in this story. Like, it negatively impacts this child. And there's a sense of jealousy when the narrator sees this Eno. They temporarily have lighter skin. And it's not really rational. It's an irrational thought to have. Like, oh, they might be maimed, but at least they have brighter skin temporarily. Like, that's not good. They maimed themselves. That's not something to be jealous about. There's something ironic about this story in that the narrator is going to move to America. And if they think that having lighter skin is going to make things greater for them, it might in some capacity, because as we see, you can pass for white, or some people will ignore, skin color if you're lighter skin sometimes. But in all classifications in America, black is black. People are prejudiced towards people of color, especially black individuals, regardless of their skin color. And this colorism is going to still exist in America, but the racism that this person feels isn't going to go away just because their skin is a lighter color. So it's interesting to see that I think that's what Okparanta is using in this story, this move to America, to highlight maybe the absurdity there, but also maybe highlighting the underlying sort of pressure there, where it's like this colonialist system, even though it's no longer, like, you live in neo-colonialist times, even though it's no longer having a colonialist impact, it's still affecting the minds of people who were once colonized by America, by European powers. So Okparanta is sending a pretty powerful message and really critiquing this colorism that might exist in Nigeria. It's also important to talk about the classism that exists in this story. You see that the family has servants, and this isn't the first story that I've read or talked about on this channel from Africa in particular, where there's a sense of classism that exists. Showing that classism isn't just a European or American thing. And in fact, it might have been passed on during colonialism, during that time period. But you can see the family has servants, and there's a sense of disgrace that because the servants have lighter skin than the people with the wealth. The narrator is made to feel inferior again because their servant has lighter skin than her. And it's like, oh, aren't you better than these people? Shouldn't you have lighter skin? Shouldn't you have the money to, get creams and other sorts of treatments? So why is your skin darker than these individuals? And a lot of that leads to the further pressure from the mother. But you can see the classism that exists there, and how how it's fortunate for the servants to have lighter skin is being made to make people with money, like the people who are supposed to be on top, to be made inferior. So I think, in addition to criticizing that colorism that exists, there's a little bit of criticism of the class system of Nigeria. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Fairness by Chinelo Okparanta. A pretty good short story, one that I definitely recommend that you check out. I'd recommend you go out and find this book if you can. I picked mine up from the local library. Don't forget to patronize your local libraries. They might have interesting short stories from Black African authors that will challenge you and get to see the world in different perspectives. If you've read this before, you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this author, this short story collection, or this book if they don't already know about it. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and colorism fighting travels. Farewell.